The way we lead impacts the way people live. This world needs truly human leadership. I'm Brent Stewart, your host. Thanks for listening. This podcast is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. You can connect with us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller, and find our podcast articles and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. You're listening to a Truly Human Leadership podcast refresher, where we reshare insight from podcast episodes from the past. We want to share with you a recent interview with Barry-Wehmiller CEO Bob Chapman that was conducted by Jane Adshead-Grant. In this interview, Bob talks about the concept of a human revolution in business. We know what the Industrial Revolution was and how it affected business. But what is the human revolution? Well, here's Jane and Bob in conversation about that very topic.
In this journey from traditional, I call management, to truly human leadership, we've been engaged in a lot of educational organizations that kind of go back to the value we attribute to the Industrial Revolution that really stimulated the job growth, economic growth, community growth, and also educational growth. And we give it a lot of credit for raising the standard of living to provide housing, shelter, food. And we look, at less industrialized countries as they've experienced industrialism as a positive thing. When we say positive, we mean from an economic standpoint. In other words, people can get jobs with more predictable income and afford better housing and afford better education. So they're kind of the rise of our civilization. But when I get into a meaningful dialogue with people about the Industrial Revolution, which was about mass production, and it strikes me from my perspective that what the Industrial Revolution was about economic gain. What happened when people started industrializing and creating the critical mass of production, mass marketing, global markets, there was a tremendous amount of wealth created. And some of these great industrial giants, Henry Ford, the Rockefellers, made a lot of money with this growth of mass production, technological innovation, global exporting. And they needed people to fill these new factories and towns all across this country, and who needed skills, engineering skills, production skills, accounting skills, sales skills, etc. And so what happened was that, to many extent, they had to pay to attract people. They had to keep benefits to keep people because they needed skilled people. But it was never, so they took a craftsman off of a farm and put him into a production line, and they put hubcaps on every 5 seconds. And then they challenged them to do it in 3 seconds to improve profitability, then 2 seconds. And then they found they could get a robot to do it faster and more reliably than the human. And so my point is, the Industrial Revolution was about economic value creation, but it was not about human value creation. We thought it was human value creation because people made better money, and we associate money with happiness. But what happened is, what we needed is, it was never about human dignity creation. And, when we took people from their craft and put them in a factory or an office and gave them a job, it was about profits. It was about growth. It was about wealth creation. It was never about human dignity. It was about the automation of functions in a way that made things more affordable and exportable. And so unfortunately, we didn't begin our economic system around human dignity and human value. It was driven by economic value. And so I say today that what we need is a human revolution that understands the Industrial Revolution and the economic value created. But we need to find human value in harmony with economic value, because we're kind of self-destructing in the interest of economic value, and we have not paid attention to human value because we assumed if we gave people a job and that meant they made money, that they would find happiness. Okay, that's just the assumption behind all these things. It's just like, why do we want full employment? Because we want people to have jobs, because jobs means money, and money means happiness. But we know that when Gallup did a survey of 155 countries for the source of happiness, they thought it would be wealth, and they found out that people, money does not create happiness beyond a certain basic level. And they thought it would be health, and they found out that health, people take their health for granted. They found out the number one source of happiness in the world is a good job working with people you enjoy, which was not the foundation of the Industrial Revolution. So the human revolution stimulates us to think about human dignity and growth along with economic value growth. So those are in harmony, not in conflict. And so we need to awaken people that were kind of self-destructing in the interest of economic gain. But again, we have economic prosperity right now. We have peace in the world, and people are very frustrated. And if you go back to why, it's because of the way they're treated for 40 hours a week. They're used for somebody else's success. So that's why I believe we need a human revolution that understands the Industrial Revolution and is created in harmony, so we can create human and economic value in harmony.
And so in your experience, Bob, how do you awaken that ability to balance the economic model for growth and a more human-centric culture, for example?
Well, first of all, I think you need to model it. This is not an academic theory I'm sharing with you. It's the journey we have been on since we were awakened to this through these series of revelations. So I think, first of all, you need to not make it an academic exercise. You need to say that we're actually doing this. We did, and in hindsight, when you look at these series of events, you know that it was not an accident upon which these things developed. For some reason, we were blessed with these experiences that awakened us to the urgent need to care for people you have the privilege of leading. I think the most startling example is in the military, we honor those who give themselves in service of others. And in business, we give bonuses to people who sacrifice others in service of themselves. Why can't we teach business leaders in our education system that their primary responsibility is the men and women in their care, in their span of leadership? Because we really don't teach them that. We teach them management, which is the manipulation of others for your success. And people are simply functions for your success. We don't see them as people's precious child that we have a chance to impact. So I would say to you, we need to raise the message up to a high level. And so what we have done is gone out and looked for some early adopters who want to join us to show that this has nothing to do with Bob Chapman or Barry-Wehmiller. This is about the way we're called to live and work together, to validate the worth of each other, to genuinely care about each other, and to pursue human dignity and economic value in harmony. And to prove that it's not a theory, that this is the only way to lead. Some people say, how do you justify caring? And my statement is, when 88% of all people in this country feel they work for an organization that does not care about them, and I think this is a global issue, and when leading healthcare institutions tell us that the person you report to at work is more important to your health than your family doctor, when we know for a fact that the way we treat people when we have them in our care for 40 hours a week goes home and affects the way they go home and treat their spouse and their children and their community, we can, you can stand back and say, we have got to do something because we're kind of self-destructing as a civilization in the interest of economic gain, short-term economic gain. And, it just, again, we're self-destructing as a civilization because we haven't embraced the human side of value creation.
And so what about some of the challenges in terms of your experience? If businesses are wanting to make this shift and leaders are beginning to feel awakened, might be some of their challenges that they face in being a better force for good in the world?
I would say to you, the biggest challenge is that how do you embrace this? Because one of our major clients, a major public company, global company, the chairman, when he heard our message, said to me, "What do I say to my board?" And I said, "Be very careful, because initially this is not a dialogue many people on a board have ever had about culture and caring. It's usually about numbers and strategy and legal matters." And a year and a half now into that relationship, that major global organization, their board has said to the chairman and the president, "You can't spend enough money on this," because they've seen the feedback, they've seen the impact. So the biggest challenge is, how do I begin and how do I engage others in this process? I mean, we've been working with our board for 12 years now. And I would say to you, our board fully supports it. Our board is proud of what we are doing. But it's still hard for a board to talk about culture because numbers are the language of business. So the challenge is bringing people along in reasonable steps so they can begin to see and feel the impact they're making on people's lives. Now, a lot of people say, well, yeah, I need to have some. One gentleman said to me from a major corporation, "What kind of return on investment are you getting on this initiative with your leadership model?" And I said, "Are you kidding me? You actually want me to calculate a return on investment for caring?" I said, "How you believe," and again, a major global corporation, "you believe you have to justify caring? You have to show a return on investment to caring?" I said, "That's really sad." I said, "I would say to you, how do you justify not caring? How do you justify being a part of a system where 88% of all people go home feeling not valued? How do you justify that?" And again, nobody debates that statistic. I mean, everybody we've dealt with at the highest levels of thought in this country, nobody debates that people are not engaged, that they would change jobs in a minute if they had a better offer. And yet people don't know how to change. And my statement to you is, it takes courage to care. You've got to believe this is the way we were called to lead. And, making that transition from believing it's, or accepting it's all about numbers and profits and shareholders, and believing it's about human value and dignity and growth is a big step. So that's why the title of my talk is always The Privilege of Leadership, not the job of leadership. The privilege of leadership, the awesome responsibility of leadership on the people whose lives are entrusted to you. But it takes courage to care. You've got to believe in your heart this is right. And again, one of the most common questions I get, virtually the top 3 questions I always get is, what do you do about the people that don't get it? Because we tend to focus on the negative rather than the positive. Nobody ever asked me, what do I do? What do you do with the people that do get it? They worry about the people. And I said, treat them like you would want your son or daughter treated if they didn't get it. And people say, well, that would be different. And I say, why is it different? There's somebody's son and daughter you're going to treat that way. So this is really a big mind shift. You got to go from what's comfortable, which is numbers, okay, shareholder value, to human value. And I believe our experiences, again, our company's share price since 2000 has gone up 14% a year compounded, which is a combination of a good business strategy. It's not just being nice. The combination of a good business strategy and truly human leadership, which is really the fuel for the engine, okay? So we don't justify doing this to improve our performance. We say we do this because it is our obligation as leaders to be good stewards of the people whose lives are placed in our care when they accepted a role in our company. So it's a big step. It's and somebody once said to me, what happens is somebody in a major division, but not the corporate. Somebody said to me after a speech one time, what if corporate doesn't support this? And I thought to myself, I said, what do they need to support? Do you need a memo from corporate to care? Okay. Why can't you just begin bringing this about in natural steps so that all of a sudden the corporate's coming to you and saying, what are you doing? We've heard nothing but good things. Share it with us. So my challenge is, you don't need capital expenditures. You don't need finances. You just need to engage your head and heart and be good stewards of the people who you have the privilege of leading, and making sure that they go home each night knowing that who they are and what they do matters.
Beautiful. And as you look back on your life's journey, Bob, I think about the lessons that you've learned, the people that you've met, people that inspired you. What would you say to your younger self to generate such positive impact?
I don't know, without these revelations that happened to me, why can't business be fun? The power of business for good, because we have people on care for 40 hours and that everybody's somebody's precious child. I don't know, without those, what I call revelations that occurred to me in that sequence, that my younger self would have been able to make that transition from what I call what I was taught and what I experienced in the marketplace. Because, you can't go out and play soccer on the soccer field and develop your own rules. You got to kind of play the game that's defined, okay? And so I would say to you, there's so much momentum towards numbers and so little momentum towards caring that it's easier to just play the game and the lowest common denominator, which is numbers, because the numbers are clear. They're not emotional, they're up or down, or they're on target or not on target. And so it's easier. So I think if somebody had shared this with me 20 years ago, I wouldn't have known what to do with it. I had to go through these awakenings in the sequence in which they happened. But all I know is that since I've done that, and since I've been given the privilege to share this message around the world, I am at the highest levels of learning institutions and the highest level of consultancy. Nobody debates with me this message I'm sharing with you. And people who come and visit our operations, world peace negotiators, professors from leading institutions, leading speakers on leadership, their consistent statement is they have never seen anything like this in their life. And these are incredible people. And so I would say to you, I think we were, without question, blessed with a leadership model that could profoundly change the world as we know it, where these young men and women who enter the workforce could have a chance to be who they're intended to be and appreciated for that. And these gentlemen who are 50 and 60 years old who've kind of gotten used to being down would actually get a chance for the balance of their career to feel valued, which is what we want for everybody. So again, the way we treat people in our care affects the way they go home and treat the people in their care. And I was never taught that, never heard that. It was only our experience when we taught people to convert from management, which is the manipulation of others for your success, to leadership, which is the stewardship of the lives entrusted to you. We saw profound changes in families with mothers and husbands and coming back to us and saying, this has made a significant difference in my personal life. Because when you send people home, when people are not cared for 40 hours a week, they're used for financial success. It drains to some extent their ability to care for others.
And so, Bob, what matters most to you now?
I think that's pretty simple for me to answer because I think we have been blessed with this awakening to what leadership should be. That in the time I have left, I need to make sure that I do justice to this message, that it becomes part of our culture in this country in all facets, because even though I'm, in quotes, a businessman, I speak in the military, I speak in the government, I speak in education, and I speak in healthcare. And this issue is prevalent in every facet of our society. And again, when in our case, the economy in America has never been stronger, and unemployment is the lowest since 1969. And we tend to associate that if we have peace in the world, which we have right now, and we have prosperity, that people will be happy. So we have peace and we have record prosperity, but people are not happy. And that doesn't make sense because we associate money with happiness. If we give them a job and they progress in their income over their career, they'll be happy. They'll have children, they'll have second homes, they'll drive a nice car. And this is not creating happiness because people don't feel valued. They feel used for somebody else's success.
And so what matters most, do you think, to those in your span of care and globally, given you have very successful business across Europe as well as the States?
I think it was best captured by Amy Cuddy, who's the number 2 TED Talk in the world. She's a Harvard professor. She came because Simon Sinek said, you've got to see this, you've got to see this. So she came as a favor for Simon. But when she sat down to reflect on what she experienced in the day and a half she was there, she said, walking through your factories, I've never cried so much and hugged so many people in my life as people who stopped me to tell me their story about what this has meant to them. And her statement was, this is as close to utopia as I have ever seen. And this is an industrial manufacturing plant in northern Wisconsin. This is not Google or Zappos or these, very high-tech, high-touch organizations. These are just good people who are trying to make a decent income, competing in the world and against all the pressures. But when you show that you genuinely care about them, when you invest in their journey from management to leadership, and they tell you about how it affects their marriage and their children, and it's hard to put a value that you could possibly comprehend on what that means to us, the feedback we get on what this means. So our goal is to, live this model, so we validate it, and we continually strive to be better stewards of this, and then to look for people who believe what we believe and want to join us on this journey to show this is nothing about Bob Chapman or Barry-Wehmiller. This is about the way we were called, having been placed on this earth, to live together in harmony, to create human value and economic value in harmony so that people can return home each night to their families feeling valued and share that value with the way they treat their spouse and the way they treat their children and the way they act in their community. So I just feel it is there's a tremendous need for this right now in the world because the current model shows that it does not create human value. And we cannot equate numbers, money, with human value. Clearly, we have prosperity in the world, but we don't have dignity in the world. We don't have caring in the world. We have people using each other for their own personal gain. And so we leave your listeners with a statement. We imagine a society where people think of others first. And they're able to do that because they feel cared for themselves, and therefore they naturally will care about others.
Wonderful. That's such a profound message. And Bob, thank you so much for this morning sharing your wisdom with us. And I have just one last question, which is if there is anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share with the listeners today, what would that be?
I think I would share with them that the experience I had a couple of years ago when my granddaughter was graduating from high school, and I went with many other family members of the other students' families and ours to this, what should be a very, momentous occasion, as basically our children leave our care and go off to college and graduate from high school and get a diploma. And while I saw great joy and pride in the family as each of those children walked up to get their diploma, I had tears in my eyes because I knew the world we were sending these kids into. A world where there's an 88% chance that they would work for an organization that cared about them, that would not care about them, that they would be disengaged. It would affect the marriage that they had. It would affect the way they raised their kids. And to me, I guess the message is we're kind of self-destructing as a society because we haven't learned how to care. I believe we naturally care for each other. I think we're born with natural caring instincts, and these are deadened, tampered down over time through manipulation, and it all begins with our education system. We need to prepare people to be leaders. And I always say we need to start working not just on the mind, but the connectedness of the mind and the heart, so that we start creating leaders to go into all facets of our economy, from nonprofit to government to healthcare to medicine to politics. They go thinking of others, not just themselves. Bill Urey at Harvard uses this very simple statement that I'd leave you with. We need to move from a me society to a we society, where we think of others in our journey to significance, not ourselves.
Don't forget to find us and connect on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter at Barry-Wehmiller. And you can find more podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening.